The Defend Our Democracy campaign says it is time to act. The group recently held their conference for Democratic Renewal and Change. Let's get more on the outcomes of that conference, and we speak to a veteran leader of the African National Congress, Cheryl Carolus, who is part of this Defend Our Democracy campaign. Ms. Carolus, thank you very much for your time. I think you heard me wrapping up what Helen Zille was saying just moments ago, and I wonder whether it touches on exactly your fears as the Defend Our Democracy campaign, that the constitution of our country is under direct threat from corrupt elements. Do you agree then with Helen Zille when she says the ANC destroys everything it touches?
Well, I want to say that the ANC is not alone in the endeavors to undermine our democracy through the current setup. That the DA has also got some really shameful blots on their name in Parliament and at all levels of government. So I think that's a conversation for another day, Corley. But no, it's in fact the whole notion of the conference we had this weekend was people from across all the political parties, ANC, DA, AZAPO, stalwarts, many of them from those movements, and a healthy dollop of young people came together because we feel that all is not well in our republic. And it's time for a radical relook because we see the consequences of a dysfunctional parliament primarily associated with the consequences of a pure list electoral system, which all the parties don't seem to have much appetite for amending, because the people in Parliament are the ones who can change this. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So we have mobilized civil society to, in fact, address this across our parties and more broadly amongst the voting public of South Africa.
Yeah, all right. So on the one hand, you've identified for us the electoral system as having been part of the discussions. Perhaps isolate for us what you consider to have been the most important declaration coming out of that conference. What should be most or uppermost in the minds of South Africans when we worry about where this country is going?
Well, the very top of mind for us is the state of corruption and the extent to which it has undermined the public's trust in elected leaders. And then, of course, the appalling state that poor people, and all citizens for that matter, find themselves in as a consequence of a breakdown of governance and what people call service delivery, although I don't like that word because it sounds far too passive. But just that a lot of our services have gone broke. And in large measure, it is related to those two aspects. Firstly, corruption. And secondly, the total lack of accountability that our electoral system creates for those entrusted with our vote to take cover and cover one another's backs in these practices and lack of accountability.
Let me ask you this question, and it's linked to what you point out to be one of the major concerns for our country, and that is the state of corruption in South Africa. One of the seminal moments to have happened this year was the appearance of a sitting president before the Human Rights Commission, and that was on the back of what was the most worrying signs for our country, and that was the July unrest. Incidentally, we are in the month of July, and we are about to perhaps revisit that ugly episode in our country. Do you believe that President, or under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa, we are winning the war against corruption in the country right now?
Coley, we in fact, examined that, and we do believe that we are seeing very promising signs of accountability being restored in this country, chief of which has been the conclusion of the Zondo Commission, which we commended. The conference commended the Zondo Commission for their sterling work that they've done. Obviously, now it's up to us as a public, not just Parliament, as a public, to examine what has come out in the Zondo Commission report and to make sure that the findings indeed do have a follow-up, because we have a very sad history in our country of commissions and nothing comes to pass on that, including the very, very tragic occurrences of last year, July, where Professor Sunday Afrika, who in fact headed up the commission of inquiry into those events, and it's all gone rather quiet. And again, not just through the ANC's negligence, but through the negligence of the entire Parliament. And we do find it shocking that all the parties who made representations to that commission, one of the things which conference over the weekend noted was absent, was how little mention there was of the fact that over 300 people died. And again, it was politicking left, right, and center in their recommendations. So we are not about to let that happen to the Zondo Commission outcomes.
Yeah.
And we're pleased to say that already we see the NPA has started to charge some of the kingpins. And that really heartens us, because it says there is a return of accountability. And we expect that some of the dangerous situations that some of those implicated might want to replicate in our country is linked to the fact that they can see the orange overalls coming towards them.
Yeah.
And so we are bracing ourselves for more disruption. We are particularly concerned that the security services in our country is fraught with corrupt and very bad apples that in many ways collude. Some of them come from the apartheid days, black and white. Some have been associated with killings at Vlakplaas, assassinations in our townships. They've remained in power, and not in power, they've remained in our security establishments, be it the police, be it our intelligence services. And we rely on those people to, in fact, be the early warning systems, and they've got agendas of their own. In fact, they were quite essential to the hollowing out of our institutions. We noted that 2 institutions were targeted by our former president and the other people, as mentioned in the Zondo report, and that was our revenue services and our security services.
Yeah.
And that's classic what wrongdoers in any country, any state do when they seek to paralyze and get up to no good. So we are looking at the outcome of the Zondo Commission, and we are seeing that accountability is starting. We did also note, I must add, Cody, that with grave concern, the events around the past while that we've seen around our president as well, and the Farmgate story that's unraveled. And we are concerned. And we believe that we need clarity, because we do need to know whether our president is someone we can trust. And if he isn't, we will treat him exactly like everybody else we can't trust. Or if he is in fact a target of some of these dark forces, we are concerned that we must rally to his defense then.
All right.
And make sure that people don't succeed.
Well, I'm glad that you have been able to counterbalance what some people listening to you will say, oh, okay, so the narrative is still around former President Jacob Zuma and the corruption that went on under his watch. But President Ramaphosa, as you say, Phala Farmgate, what has that done to his credibility in the fight against corruption the longer he remains silent on this issue?
Well, we do not believe the silence or the breaking of the silence is only on the lap of President Ramaphosa. We believe that the people who have raised these allegations have been very thin on substance. And for serious allegations like this, we do want to see that people go under oath and present this evidence. Those making allegations have also claimed that they have further information of these alleged serious crimes, and that in itself is a crime. So there's work which needs to be done there, that those making the allegations and who claim they're sitting on more detailed information, I must query why they're not bringing this. What are their motives? And what is the timing, especially because they claim they've had this information for years now. So that's very suspect. And we do think that everybody across the board, the onus should be far more on those who are accusing to come forward and give that information urgently to the relevant authorities, who will then need to make a judgment call whether there is a chargeable offense or not. In the absence of that, we can't tie our police services and everybody down in chasing wild allegations. Tomorrow I could make allegations about you. But we cannot have this hanging over our president's head, especially in these dangerous times, which is why we urge the police and the hawks and everybody to, in fact, take the necessary steps to get that information and to get it in a sworn form from these people who are making the accusations. That's where the onus and the focus must be.
All right.
The president is being accused of.
Yeah. All right. While you question the credibility of those who are raising these issues around the president. By the way, I don't want this to be about President Ramaphosa, but whilst we're on the subject of the president, was it an error of judgment or something intentional then that around the very same period of these allegations that took place at his farm, an auction is held there, and we understand, and there are video clips going around of the president saying that running this country appears to be something that he regards as a side hustle. Is that something that is palatable, should be palatable to South Africa, to the South African public? Should we accept that?
I haven't seen this clip which says the president treats this as a side hustle. I would be disturbed if that is the case, but I haven't seen it, so I wouldn't want to lend credence to it until I've seen it myself.
All right. Let's move on then and talk about the failure by Parliament to conduct its work. And it's interesting that you bring up the issue of accountability, because they did not escape the scathing remarks of the chairperson of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. And that's because of their failure, in fact, if anything, possibly endorsing the whole era of state capture, allowing it. That report talks about enabling state capture. Parliament failed in its work. Why should South Africans believe in them this time around?
Well, I think that's a matter that Parliament should answer for itself. And at the conference, we really pinned this down to the question of our electoral system for national parliament. At local government, we have a combination of direct elections and of PR lists, which is gives a little bit more accountability. So we would say that Parliament must examine that. There's a report and a deadline up until December, and conference has resolved that we are going to use this time to make our inputs as civil society heard and felt in this review that the Constitutional Court has mandated, and in fact has been forced to ask Parliament to extend the deadline to December. And we believe that all of civil society must give their inputs there, and we do think that electoral reform is necessary. We noted the fact that the PR listen system, given where we were in 1994, was perhaps something that was necessary and the best under the circumstances, but perhaps a little bit over-optimistic. So we, as with a lot of provisions we have, we wrote it in the belief that we were dealing with saints and people whose moral authority would never degenerate. Well, we know different now, and which is why we think that we have to learn from the experience of over 25 years, and this is an opportunity to change that. We also noted the deafening silence from the parties on the question of party political funding, And the fact that there is a law in Parliament that now prescribes disclosure, and up to now, only the ANC and the DA have submitted their declarations of their party funding. The EFF, nothing. None of the other parties have either. And so I also think this is maybe something that the media should call them out on. Well, and then I want to say, sorry.
Well, can I interrupt you there for a second?
Yes.
Because you're saying that it appears at the moment that it's the ANC and perhaps the Democratic Alliance that have been willing to disclose who their funders are. But that same ANC, there's talk now that they want to reverse that very same law that seeks to hold them accountable in terms of who donates to them. How does that sit?
It's not ANC. This is the thing, is that I think rightly as the governing party, and I refuse to call them the ruling party because they don't rule me, even though I am obviously an ANC person, the governing party, and it's important for the governing party to remember they are governing, and this breakdown of governance is a problem and they must just walk away from this notion of ruling us. But because we're very ungovernable, actually, if they try and insist on that. But it's not just the ANC, incidentally, the DA, everybody. And in fact, in the process of this law, of this writing of this bill, you can ask Valimosa, who was in fact coordinating the process. There was almost more opposition from the DA on this matter. So all the parties are now trying to firstly increase the limits that is imposed by the bill, and to limit the levels of transparency, not just the ANC, the whole lot of.
We would be remiss if we don't include the private sector's own participation in corrupt activities,
exactly.
Ms. Carolus. And so my question to you, very briefly, if you can, how significant a contributor toward the derailment of our constitutional democracy, the private sector's participation, and at times they've been said that they are the corruptors of those who are in the public sector?
No, they are. I mean, it's a two sides of a coin. There's a corrupter and a corruptee. And in fact, we can turn the taps down a lot quicker if there wasn't corruption. And we mustn't forget that some of the top firms in this country were complicit. And there's absolutely no focus on them. Now, the Zondo Commission had to look at state capture and what happened in the state. In the wash came out evidence, like KPMG, many big firms in this country, global firms, who have a lot to say about our country, were active not only in corruption, but facilitating and enabling the hollowing out. You think of KPMG, it was proven in the Zondo Commission that as a KPMG senior person wrote the report that gave Jacob Zuma the grounds on which he could fire that investigative forensic unit.
Yeah.
That was obviously the first target. Where are those people from KPMG? They were all allowed to resign from KPMG. They were given golden handshakes. And in fact, McKinsey's. The man from McKinsey is now heading up a senior plus job in London for McKinsey's. And why are these people held to account? I beg your pardon?
Let me interrupt you. In the interest of time, I'm completely out. But allow me to squeeze this. And please, if you can, in less than a minute, otherwise I'll be fired.
I'll try.
Why are you still a member of the ANC, given where things are in this country? Are you still proud to be a member of this party?
Yes, I am, because I believe that, like many of our parties and the voters or their members, we have allowed a really, really crooked bunch to hijack our agendas. And I will not hand over my legacy of my struggles and my pain or my future to a bunch of Tsotsis. I am going to fight it out.
Cheryl Carolus, a veteran leader of the African National Congress, unflinching in her remaining a member of this party. Thank you very much for your time.